Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. I'm a human who cares about supporting other humans. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience with them, where they've been stuck, what it feels like, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others. I believe that when we feel more connected and seen, magic can happen. And remember, if you find yourself sitting on a comma in your life, you can also talk to me without a microphone. To explore coaching with me and getting off the comma in your own life, check out my information and book a call with me at offthecomma.com. And I'm also doing something different. I'm curating my own sponsor community, local businesses and professionals who I handpick and who align with our vision here. Be sure to check them out, learn more about them on my website and my YouTube channel. In the meantime, let's get into this week's conversation. All right, we're back for another exciting episode of Off the Comma, and I'm really excited because we just continue to be so fortunate to have this community of storytellers who are showing up, talking about their experiences with being stuck and getting unstuck, and quite frankly, just kind of giving us a window into their lives and giving us on all an opportunity to reflect on our own lives and to pull from their stories. So this week is no exception. Again, this week, I'm meeting someone for the first time. We're going to introduce Brownell here in just a moment. But I haven't had a chance to meet her yet. And I know that she has a fascinating story to tell us, even though I don't know the details. And I'm looking forward to getting to know her. I'm looking forward to getting to know you, Brownell, through your story today. So I'm going to stop rambling and I'm going to hand it over to you. And Brownell, tell us, how would you like to be known? And before we get into your story, what are some things you would like for us to know about you to begin with?
Yeah. Well, the adjectives, you asked me for adjectives, and I think creative is probably one of the top ones. I think that's what most people call me. One of the favorite things I like to be called is brilliant, just because it's not just about intelligence, but it's about light.
Mm.
And so I kind of love that word. And I don't know. I'm also, this isn't a single word, but a kind of an explorer of metaphysical mysteries.
Ooh.
So, I like to be I think that's an intriguing thing to be known for, is that I'm always an explorer and I'm always going to be an explorer.
Hmm. I love that. I self-referencing, I'm an explorer, so already I know I'm going to be loving your story today.
Great.
What else would you like for us to know about you? And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be the age old, like, what do you do for a living? But, if there's anything of interest that you'd like to share to get us to know you a little bit more.
Well, given the theme of your show, and this whole idea of commas and restarts and relooking at your life, here's an interesting anecdote that a lot of people don't know, is that I have failed so many times that I have been a keynote speaker at two different failure conferences.
Oh, wow. Okay. Questions already like, okay, failure conferences and oh, I could ask so many questions. Say more that you feel is important to say about what you just told us.
Well, I mean, what does failure mean, right? I mean, there are failure conferences. These were both a number of years ago, but that doesn't mean the failures necessarily ended then. But they were, there are conferences that actually talk about failure and how important failure is and how it can propel you and what you need to learn from it. And I'm a writer. And so I write fiction and nonfiction. And if you're writing fiction, the big thing that you need to make sure is you throw rocks at your protagonist, right?
Mm.
They've got to have obstacles. They've got to have challenges. If life is easy, it's not a very interesting story. And I think that's true for life in general. Is we've got those obstacles that we have to overcome. Some of us more than others. Some of us bigger obstacles. Some of us more frequent obstacles. But yeah, it's just like, trial and error and keep trying new things. And I think it goes with the explorer thing, right? Is that
Mm.
okay? Well, how do you learn resilience? I guess you have to have an open mind to try something different the next time around. So
Well, and you said it right. I was already thinking like, isn't that what an explorer does? And that's kind of my experience too. It's like the things that frustrate me and really kind of I feel like complicate my life. I am an explorer too. And it's like, I guess in some way, I'm actually exploring those things as well. I've said before, if somebody ever asks me, oh, are you an expert at getting unstuck? I'm like, hell no, I'm an expert at being stuck. So this
Yeah,
sounds like
exactly. I'm such a failure that I'm an expert at failure, you know? It's
Mm.
like
You get so good at something that it becomes the opposite of what you thought it was, right? Like failures become a profession and an industry and a trade for you in a way. It sounds
Yeah,
like.
well, it certainly wasn't something I wanted to wear as a banner. I'm not going to pretend like it was. And the what this last year has been an especially big shift in a whole lot of things related to my life and my mindset. And so now I'm looking back at the things that have happened before. And as I said, I'm a writer. My first book is called Five Reasons Why Bad Things Happen. So when people say everything happens for a reason, I was like, yeah, I wrote the book on it, you know. So
Wow.
so I do understand I've had enough of a history with quote unquote bad things happening. And yet in this last, 14 months or something like that, I have had these things happen and go, wait a minute, now my whole life is different. I'm looking at things in a whole different way. So I
Mm.
think that that's why I think we were, our reason for why we got together is to maybe share that, right? Is that sometimes there can be a shift in your life that just changes everything and it puts you in a different trajectory. And that's what's happened
Mhm.
with me for sure.
Oh, wow. And folks won't know this, but you and I talked already before we started recording, and I think we're going to be talking more. But um, yeah, what I will say is that there's very much a reason, I believe, even though I don't know your story yet, that you and I are talking today, and subsequently others are, which leads me into the first question before we get into the five questions, which is Brownell, even though we're going to frame the conversation with those questions, I always do this with every guest. I like to start as you think ahead to the next, let's call it 40, 45 minutes or so, in the telling of your story to all of us, what intention would you have for yourself?
For myself or for the listener?
For either. Yeah, kind of, I guess both are your intention in a way.
Yeah, well, because I mean, for the listener, I guess I would love to have listeners become more explorers, right?
Hmm.
I was told many years ago by somebody, I was like, "Oh, this is the answer to this question." He said, "No, Brownell." He said, "You're an explorer, and you're always being explored. So you're never going to have the definitive answer to anything
Hmm.
because that's part of being an explorer." And so that is it. And I really am big on the why, right?
Hmm.
So if I can I'm always looking for the why because I'm always exploring the why. So I don't necessarily have a definitive why on anything that's happening. And that's part of the fun is if you're looking for the why and exploring the why. So I guess that's kind of the intention is, to maybe open some minds and have people thinking about, oh, wait a minute, maybe there's a why this is happening. Maybe this is a why that I'm either on a comma, looking for a comma, transcending a comma, that all of that's happening for a reason. And if you get to the why, you can get to lots of really exciting stuff. So
Yeah. Well, and tell me if I'm wrong. I'll reflect back throughout our conversation. So anytime if it feels like I'm off base, by all means, correct me. It almost feels like there's a one more part, at least for me, which is there's always a reason why that can serve you or that may serve you.
Well, yes. I mean, with inherent with the whole concept of why is that there is some sort of other force that's involved in our life, right?
Mhm.
And that we can have a why that maybe our own internal propulsion, like, okay, this is happening because I screwed up over here, and now I need to learn from that, and I need to do something different. Or I thought this was my path, and not. And there can also be a why that is kind of transcendent to a higher level, whatever kind of definition of spirituality or higher power or energy or anything like that. Is there a bigger plan? Is there something that could be at work that, and I'm going to get into this, but I do believe in, I use the concept, I've never heard anybody use this term yet, but I call traffic angels. that it's like if you're here and someone else is somewhere else, how do they get you together? And that I
Yeah.
really do believe they're forces that are like conspiring in our favor, even though sometimes they may have to be like border collies knocking us on a path that we might not
Yeah.
think we want to go down.
Well, then I'd like to amend what I said. And again, this is just kind of my own personal taking from this is like the why. This is really good. I talk about the why a lot in my profession and things that I do, but there could be a why that serves you and there could be a why that you serve it. It seems like
Yes, yes,
cool.
and that's kind
Cool.
of a bigger why, or maybe and maybe, um, it's part of your plan, right? It's part of why
Mm,
you came to into this incarnation, into this world, into this, and, into this body at this time to do these things. So
mhm.
you might have signed up for something, in advance saying, "I wanna learn this," or "I wanna accomplish this," or "This is what I want to do in this lifetime," and then you come here and you're like, "Okay, I have amnesia. What was that again?" And so we have to kinda get realigned because I think if you're talking about the concept of free will happens in 2 places, right? Free will happens before we're born as we're planning our life, and free will happens when we get here and go, "Oh, crap, what was that again?" Or like, "I thought I wanted to do that, but I'm not sure," or, "I do need a reminder and I need some help."
Yeah,
So,
yeah. It's
kind
like
of fits
sky
on all
sky
the points.
skydiving. Like, yeah, I'm gonna go do skydiving, and you sign up for it, and then you get in the plane. You're like, I'm not sure I want to do this.
Yeah, exactly,
My
exactly.
intention for our call today is to support you in creating and bringing about your intention, and that obviously in the telling of your story, there will be people out there who hear a little bit of themselves in you and your story that they connect with that story. They feel a little less alone, and in the best of cases, it maybe inspires and empowers someone to do something that they've been wanting to do or feeling like they needed to do.
Yeah, I mean, if I can open a mind, then that is like the best thing I think you can do is just help
Yeah.
somebody open their mind to a new something new, some new idea that they haven't considered. So,
Well, let's get into it. I'm really excited to hear your story. The first question, Brownell, is where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma?
yeah. Well, I've had a lot, obviously, because if you have a lot of failures, you have a lot of commas. But the one that comes to mind when I was, preparing for this and thinking what is compelling to people is 14 months ago, well, June, whatever, of 2023. I'm living in Colorado. I'd been there for 7 years. It's getting kind of entrenched, even though I was renting. And then all of a sudden, my landlord wants to raise the rent 50%.
Mm,
So I was like, okay, now what do I do? Right. This
mhm,
is okay. I'm thinking I'm going down this one trajectory. I'm thinking this is where I'm going to be. I get kind of settled. And then it was like, no, I can't swing that kind of rent. And it was also kind of the kick in the butt that I needed to get moving into a different direction.
mhm.
So it was a pause to go, okay, now I'm thinking I'm here, it's like if you wanna use, like, as a writer, write a metaphor of your comma is, this comma was in this life, and all of a sudden, I need to start a new chapter,
Oh, yeah,
to go
yeah.
down a whole 'nother path to say, "Okay, what am I gonna do now?" And, I'm sure you're gonna ask more about it, but I'll just give you the first part of it was, I thought, "Well, then I think I'm gonna go to Italy." And then that led into all kinds of things that didn't quite go exactly like I planned, but I guess there was another plan that I was supposed to follow.
So I'd love to get into this and by all means elaborate because this is a storytelling podcast. Okay, many people can relate to that experience of, oh crap, now the circumstances have changed, particularly when it comes to financial. And don't get me started on this world we're living in right now. We'll keep it on you. This situation has changed. You said the universe has kind of delivered a kick in the butt to get you moving. So now you're in this place of what next? What made you pick Italy?
I know.
Tell us about that journey to Italy. I mean, this is all really part of your comma story. So expand for us.
Yeah, yeah. Well, why Italy? Because I mean, I was just like blank, like where am I going to go? And there was nothing that felt at all compelling except Italy.
Hmm.
And one of the reasons is I just released a novel series, and a lot of it is set in Italy. So I just thought I was in the process of finishing it up then, and I knew within the time period that I thought, well, this is a good a place as any to go. So I'm all like, yes, and I get an apartment there for a year. It looks like it's working out. And then, oops, they're not even taking applications for visas. Like,
Mm,
not even take and from where I lived, which was Aspen, I would have had to fly to Chicago to get an appointment to get a visa. Anyway,
mm,
so this is like one of those things like there's another plan in this for me because I'm thinking, I'm all gung ho and it kind of ties back to all the failures too. Like I'm thinking this is my path and obviously something is not letting that be the path. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? And I found out that I could get a tourist visa basically. So I could stay for 3 months, but I had to go somewhere else for 3 months before I could go back for another 3 months.
mhm.
So the apartment I had didn't work because I wasn't going to pay a year when I was going to stay there half the time. And so I had to get all that rescheduled and I had to figure out where am I going to go for 3 months between those times. And so I went to Tunisia, which not of a lot of Americans go to. I think
Right.
I felt like I was the only American in Tunisia the whole time I was there. But I went to Tunisia for 3.5 months. And so it was like this really interesting experience. And I get to Italy. One of the other reasons I chose it is Italian was my language in college. So I thought,
Okay.
okay, I'll pick that up. Not at all. Like,
Mhm.
not e I spent hundreds of hours listening to stuff, doing Babel, doing all these things. I even had a tutor when I got there. It was like I didn't know any of it. The
Oh,
synapses in the brain were gone. Where I lived was, close enough to the tourist area. You think a 10-minute walk is right there, but a 10-minute walk in Florence is where I went, is actually a pretty long walk given the fact that it's not, right in the heart of it. And I was also, to give myself a little bit of a break, I was finishing my books. So I was writing most of the day. So it wasn't
mm,
like I was out trying to meet people and trying to assimilate. But I tried, and I definitely got my mission accomplished as far as what I wanted to learn while I was there. My story is about a famous couple that's from Italy, from the history that I could spoil for you if you want. But so I wanted to learn about. I wanted to go to this person and they're these people, this couple, and kind of feel their life. And so I do feel like I really got to know them, right? So I
mm,
got that mission accomplished. So then I thought, and I also was dealing with a heart issue with AFib, which is pretty common, I guess, for people my age or around my age. And it got worse in Florence. I had some pretty bad experiences there. So I'm thinking, what am I going to do? So I thought, well, I've already prepaid for Tunisia. I'm going to Tunisia. And I found this luxury resort, beautiful luxury resort on the Mediterranean, sunrise from my window, $1,000 a month, including 2 meals a day.
oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go there anyway. I've already prepaid it. And I get there on a Thursday night on January 11th. The next day, I meet a man.
Okay. And by the
So
way, listeners don't know this, but you're grinning. You're grinning as you're telling this story, and now you're really grinning.
I'm grinning and I'm also grinning at your grin, right? So I'm watching your reaction and you're grinning.
Okay.
And I'm like, so because I knew that was going to come out of left field for you. You're like, okay, I didn't think this is where her story was going to go at all. So I liked kind of being that little tease for you, going,
Oh, the
wait a minute.
storyteller in you. You love that. Okay.
And then a couple of weeks later, I was been working with a book marketing coach who's just been a dream. Her name's Karen, and she's like, "You've got to write a separate story to your story." And I was like, "Well, I know what I'm writing about. I'm writing about this encounter with this man."
Mhm.
And um, I start writing it, and I writing characters, thinking it's fiction, right? But also knowing that I'm writing, changing the names to protect the innocent and the guilty, and all of that.
Mhm.
But I'm writing it from the point of view of what I call the upstairs. So I'm like pointing up if people are watching, visualizing how my gestures is that basically that there's a team upstairs that is looking at this couple. I call them Nell and Robert. And by the way, anybody listening, I can give you this story for free. So, I'm not teasing
Okay.
you to have to buy something because I want people to read it because it's just been so interesting to see the reaction to it. Anyway, I'm writing it, this team of four entities, four souls, four spirits, whatever you want to call them, and writing about how they were coordinating this meeting between
Mm,
Nell and Robert. His name's not really Robert, just so you know. Um, and it's like, how do you get an American woman in Colorado to meet a British man in Tunisia? Like the
mm,
logistics of that. I started writing it. It was like it's kind of comedic, and they're kind of having fun, and they're arguing with each other, and they're like, "How what went wrong, and what went right, and how did this happen?" And then as I'm writing, I'm like, "Wait a minute, they're real. They're telling me who they are. This is a real team on the other side that's making this happen." And so you can
mm.
imagine how that that created a whole nother kind of comma, if you will, because that changed things a lot for my mind.
Mm. Well, there's a lot in this, and I so appreciate the telling of the story. There's a lot of you're very descriptive in what you're describing. Tell us a little bit more, and we'll get into the second of the five questions here in a minute, but tell us a little bit more about what was going on for you through this experience, like the feelings, what you were seeing, hearing, and what was it like to be on this comma during this whole period? Because what I'm hearing you say is, life suddenly said, okay, the way that I'm doing this isn't going to be possible anymore, or at least it's not going to be comfortable. Life wants me to take a different direction. I don't know what direction to go, but here, let me pull something out of my internal resources. I have some connection to Italy. That makes sense. Let's start there. Okay, difficulty, some challenges along the way. Get to Italy, connect with it in a different way than what you thought you were, but you did accomplish what you wanted to. Then, okay, now, boop, time to go again. Well, where do I go? I already had this thing. Let's go there. And now, surprise. And within the surprise is another surprise. That's what I'm hearing so far.
Yeah.
What's that? What was going on for you within you in
Well,
amidst this?
amidst it, I'm like, okay, what is going on in my life? Because I keep thinking, I've set a goal, it doesn't work. I set a goal, it doesn't work.
Mhm.
Like I think I'm going down this path, boom, that's not going to be. And then all of a sudden, I'm realizing that this team upstairs is orchestrating everything, then all it realizes like they're like border collies knocking me on a path that they want me to go down. Like I want to go to the right and they want me to go to the left. I mean, they're going to keep knocking me. And
Mm,
then you get to this really weird place. And I mean, I am not a young person. I'm 66 years old, and all of a sudden I'm like I have to surrender to what they want. I
mm,
have to just surrender to what they want. And I was getting this very clear kind of messages and downloads after I started writing the story, right? Up until that point, it's like, why is this not happening? Why is this not happening? And do a little tease on the story of meeting the man, that wasn't seamless and, flowed naturally and easily either, right? So there
mhm,
was lots of obstacles related to that as well. So I'm like, what is going on? And then when I started realizing I'm writing the story and they're real, it was like, wow, now I kind of understand why certain things didn't work out. Like, and I am hoping that you and the listeners understand, like, maybe you think, oh, this is the relationship, but that isn't the relationship, but you learned something there because it's guiding you to the next one. And if you
mm,
hadn't gone through that one or gone to that one place or taken that one job or had that one quote unquote failure, it might not have guided you the path that you should have gone on. So you can sit there and go, well, wait a minute, Italy didn't work out quite like I wanted it to. I got a lot of benefit from it. So it did, but it wasn't like this is home. So I'm
mhm.
still lost in terms of figuring out home.
Can I jump in on
Yeah.
that right there before you go too far away from this point and self-referencing a little bit? But I also believe, this is one of those kind of magical points in your story where we can often operate under kind of like, yeah, I just assume what she means. Let's go specifically into what it means for you. So what you just said was, at some point, each of the failures or each of the bumps is a step, and they're taking you to this next place. And you described surrender. Like I'm really speaking selfishly as somebody who kind of lives in that mode too. It's one thing to intellectually recognize it's like, yeah, you just kind of, I guess you're on the bumpy path, and that's the path it's going to be. you can intellectually accept that. How do you emotionally accept that? Because you can say, okay, I guess I'm going to be, going the bumpy road, but the road is still fucking bumpy and it's uncomfortable and it's hard. Like, how do you get through it even when you've accepted it?
Uh, Awesome question. And in some ways, I guess the part of it has been if I'm tuning in to them upstairs and I'm listening to what they want and I am doing things. So it kind of goes both ways, but if I'm doing something that I know that they want, or I'm doing something, I find out that that's what they want because they reward me like you wouldn't believe. So
Hmm.
I will get flooded with good feeling, good emotion, good energy when I am in alignment with what they want. And when I'm not, then the road is bumpier, right? That being said, you know, the rest of the story, because it's been a year now, and now we're into September. And it's been almost a year since I started the travel. It's been I was in Tunisia until the end of April. So there's been a lot that's happened since then, and not all of that has been even remotely easy. I also kind of now understand and accept that, okay, this is still happening for a reason. They want this. They see something more from me. I've got to tune in and find out what they want. So it all of that has been much easier because I can feel the flood of the good emotions and the good energy when I'm doing what I should be
Mm,
doing.
okay.
It's still not easy to be totally in surrender because I'll tell you right now, I'm still living nomadically. I'm in a hotel right now. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, of all places. And went back to Colorado and got my heart fixed, so that problem is over.
Hmm.
And now I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to be. I still don't know where I'm going to end up. So I mean that surrender of going, where do you want me to be? And I don't know, and
Yeah.
they won't answer. Isn't that easy?
Is there, I'm completely inserting something here, but
Yeah.
and then I don't want to forget. So just keyword, big question. Don't let me forget.
Okay.
In this place, it seems like, is this true for you? You tell me. Now you're back at uncertainty again, because now you're like, okay, I'm at another point where there's supposed to be a path or at least a fork, and there's nothing.
Right.
And you're describing the, oh, the oh shit of it, right? Is there also a little bit of exhilaration? Like, and this is also another new blank slate? I mean, is there any element of that in there too?
Oh, totally. I mean, the whole thing is so different to be surrendering to something, to these energies, these entities. Because I wrote the story, and the story is called The End, a Love Story to the Universe, right? So
Hmm.
you can infer the subtext within all of that. And now they're telling me, oh, no, there's a sequel, and you've got to write that. And they're flooding
Hmm.
me with the ideas of writing the sequel. And that is making, as I'm writing, I'm creating this reality. They're telling me what it is, and then it's happening in real life. I mean, it is
Wow.
surreal as you can freaking get.
There's was there? Oh my God! In no way do I mean to diminish your story, but I want to say this has been explored before. That there was a movie or something out there about
Well,
someone.
there's a movie called Ruby Sparks that is, I don't know if you've seen that. It's Paul Dano and Zoe, whatever her last name is. I can't remember her last name. And I think they're married in real life. But anyway,
Hmm.
he's writing a woman, and she manifests. And then he said
Okay.
she
Okay.
speaks with a French accent, and all of a sudden she starts speaking with a French accent. Like he's
Oh
a
wow.
writer and he's creating that. I think there was also an episode of TV series that I didn't see. I think
Hmm.
like a Supernatural or one of those sort of series that might have done something
Okay.
similar. So certainly it might have. I
Yeah.
haven't
Well,
necessarily read it, but I'm not pretending to be the original, but
no, no, no,
it's
no. And that's
real.
why I'm saying, like, that aside,
Yeah.
what I'm hearing you say, because it's your story today, and what I'm hearing you say is like, in a way, I'm fascinated by this because in a way, it's like, and I am going to ask the big question. Um, it's almost like these aren't the right words, but it's almost like you've set your life aside to be the character in another story, and there's this element of accepting that that's your role, and yet there's also the coming back to, and it's also still my life.
More than you know. More than
Mm,
you know. Without getting into I mean, I'm getting into weird stuff territory anyway, but to get it, there was something that happened to me 4 years ago that took away all of the original planning that I might have had for this lifetime. Like,
Okay.
the slate was completely wiped clean.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because I do believe, in fact, I wrote a children's book, and some of the verses are like, "We decide on our lessons, the paths we will take, awards we might go for, and mistakes we might make. For life isn't easy and not always fun, but easy is boring, like games always won. So we set up our
Mm.
challenges and mountains so high to test our endurance and reach for the sky." Right. So I won't go into more of that, but that's kind of what we do in advance, right? We set up this like hoop, and it not everything is predetermined. That would be boring, and that what would be the point? But I do think we kind of create a roadmap. We kind of key intersections, key people. 4 years ago, that was gone. Nothing that was pre-planned for my life existed anymore. Everything was starting anew. So when you're saying that, that is much more true with me than it could be possibly even be true for most people. Because most people do still have some sort of soul contracts or soul lessons or paths or experiences that they signed up to do, and
Yeah.
mine were gone. Mine were wiped out. So if the higher, if my life was meaning to do a certain career thing or meet a certain person or whatever, that wasn't into predetermination or predestination at all. Like, it had to
Mm.
be completely rewritten, which is why I needed the team.
Mhm. So that brings me to the big question then, and then I'm gonna come back out to the 5
I
questions
told you
as
this
well.
would
So
be weird.
no, no, no. I'm loving this, and I don't think there's anything weird about it at all, in my opinion. How did you know? You talk about the team, them upstairs. How did you realize that they were real? Because you went from a place of writing about something as an idea to then saying, no, this is actually happening.
Few ways. I mean, as a writer and writers in general, we can kind of tune in, and and the characters start speaking to us like we think we're, like they become real. And I know a lot of
Uh-huh.
writers talk about that. One of my favorite quotes is a Bob Dylan quote, and he said, like, the song was there before I came around. I just wrote it down. Like, it was already existing. So on some level, when we write, we do sort of feel that way. Like, are we tapping into something that as was an idea or something that existed? What was different was when they would tell me something, I would feel it and I would manifest it, and then I get rewarded. I mean, I would be elated on the days where I knew they were saying, "Here's how you handle this situation." And a lot of it was with the man, to be clear. And it was also work stuff and writing stuff, and because I'm also writing my finishing the editing. At that point, I was in the editing phase of my trilogy. So there is a natural part of that as a writer, that you think you're tapping into something and that characters become real. It was the way they rewarded me, and I felt the actual impact of my life that
Mm.
was something I have never experienced before. If that makes sense, is that
Okay.
kind of answer?
Yeah, and it also seems to compare to how other people would describe their journeys, whether it was an intuitive hit or whether it was a sign from God or whether it was people have different ways of describing based on their own experiences,
Right,
right? And their own systems of belief and so forth. So that's why I say this isn't weird to me at all, because I believe everyone's relationship to whatever they deem a higher power is uniquely theirs, and nobody else has a right to say anything about that. And what I notice as an observer of life and people is that when you look at all of these things, often we're describing very similar or very related types of experiences. So it doesn't seem weird to me at all. And yeah, I'm hearing you say, like, I wrote down in my notes, like, because I get signs, I get
right.
signals, I get
Right.
confirmation.
Yeah, the really
Yeah.
the difference, because I think that is, common. Um, I think that I was always looking for them, and I was thinking, "Oh, well, this is what I wanna do. Hey, guys upstairs or God or whatever you wanna say, help me out." This was more like they were telling me what they wanted me to do, and I was doing it, and then they were saying, "Good." And in the process of writing it, made that happen, right? And so, but I mean, I want to also encourage you and everybody, you don't have to be a writer to write this stuff down, right? And to get them to tell you, whether you call it automatic writing or, what other terminology you might use, they want to talk. and they want to help. And so it's a way to do that.
It's so cool because you just tap into these themes that I hear a lot about, and I know others are as well. Like as a life coach, we talk about the power of speaking things into existence. I have a dear friend who's a spiritual reader, and when she and I are having kind of like heart to heart conversations or leaning on each other for advice, like she'll correct me, and by correct me I mean scold me, because I might be saying negative things, right? Like being hard on myself. And she's like, you're speaking that into existence. And then I forget, oh shoot. The author's name is on the tip of my tongue, but the author who wrote about, if I don't capture the story while it's fresh, then it will go on to somebody else. Like she wrote
Liz
half of,
Gilbert.
yes, Elizabeth Gilbert.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was thinking you're probably talking about Big Magic, which is another one. That concept of the fact that these ideas are living entities,
Hmm.
and their energies, and they land on the right person to get them there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that all makes sense. This was just different from that, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
this was like real time communication back and forth. And there
Hmm.
were some things that have happened since that have been really dramatically challenging. Um, and yet they're telling me, don't worry, this is what's supposed to happen.
Okay.
And then sometimes I'm saying, okay, what next? And they're like, oh, crickets.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right? So, well, I have to that's when I like when the trust comes in, you know? And I was talking to somebody the other day and they said, "What's the difference between faith and trust?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Now you really you took me
Hmm.
into a topic I'm not sure I know the answer to." But
Interesting. And or do we need to, or do we need to right now? As you look back at the story that you've been sharing with us so far, this comma that you were sitting on, what has changed for you as a result of sitting on? No, actually, let me back up. Second question is, what did this create for you sitting on this comma?
it created opportunities that I never would have imagined. I mean,
Mm.
it just opened up so many pathways and so many doors. And, I don't want to get into this aspect of it too, but one of the things that I also did that kind of changed a lot, and I think it might have been a catalyst. I actually went to, while I was in Florence, I flew over to Barcelona to do a Bufo trip. I don't know if you know much about
I
Bufo.
have a friend who told me about their experience with it.
Yeah,
Yes.
and what that does from a scientific by the way, did it legally, safely, medically supervised. I wouldn't do it. Please, please, please don't do it unless it's medically supervised and legal and safe. Don't,
Hmm.
don't. It's too intense. It's too important. Um, and it opens up the neurotransmitters of your brain. I mean, it literally will open up possibilities in your brain you never considered because that's how it works as a medicine.
Mm.
And so it did open up some of these things that, especially, being at the time 65, like, okay, you get your patterns in your life, and all of a sudden now your patterns are a little different and you open up another thing. So it did open up this whole idea of possibilities that I hadn't considered. And the comma, of course, of the rent increase, I don't know that I would have thought of going to Italy. I wouldn't have been like, I don't have a house. I gave away whatever stuff I had, which wasn't much because I was renting. But when I moved to Colorado, I gave away all my stuff. Then I had to get rid of all of it again. Then, who knew Tunisia? I mean, like,
Hmm.
that was not necessarily a place that, I mean, it's 92 miles from Sicily, which is why I chose it. So it's really right there.
Right.
So anyway, all of those things I think answer that question.
Yeah. Okay. So the third question is, what did you learn about yourself as a result of sitting on this comma? And it sounds like, this is still an ongoing because you are an explorer. You're always kind of living on the comma, so to speak. Um,
Absolutely.
what have you learned about yourself? What are you learning about yourself?
I'm learning about myself that I used to be, and when you're talking about like the coaching and spiritual guides and some of these people, they're like, set your goals, know your intentions, put them on a vision board, know what you want. None of that worked for me. Like that was the worst possible thing I could have done. And that's why the failures happen, right? That's why I kept struggling to try to make certain things happen. It was just not getting there because I thought I set my goals. And I even thought I was in alignment with what, the higher power would want and with my goals. And yet, why weren't they manifesting?
Hmm.
And so now I'm like, okay, I have to surrender. I have to understand that. And it's funny because it's not even that quote unquote they have goals for me because again I had this blank slate from 4 years ago, but that I had to learn let me listen, let me listen, and let them tell me. And I have to be comfortable in the silence when they're silent too.
Mm,
And that's really hard for me
mhm.
because, I know where I'm going to be the next few weeks. Then I think I know where I might be for a few months after that. Then I don't know. I have no idea. Like that's that's an uncomfortable place to be. And I'm like even recently, I'm like, please give me an idea. Like, please tell me
Yeah.
where you want me to be.
Well,
And yet there's some
uncomfortable.
things that are happening that I know they're making happen behind the scenes that I can't know about yet. And if
Mhm.
I knew about them, then I might muck it up.
Mhm. Mm.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I
No, no,
wanted
I
to.
was interrupting you. I was going to say uncomfortable is kind of the lightest end of the spectrum, isn't it? Because for many people, it would be outright disorienting. And I think it's important to acknowledge, first of all, you for being able to describe what it's like to be an explorer in life. Acknowledge the fact that um, these are kind of my opinions, and I also have a perspective on this as well. But that here in the United States, we live in a culture that kind of celebrates goals and having it buttoned up and that sort of thing. And when we do celebrate explorers, I believe we have a tendency to romanticize it and not show the realities of what it's like, which is what you're revealing for us. Is like it is just as difficult as being any other kind of way of being.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say justice. It's
Or
just a different kind of
right,
difficult, right?
comes with
Because
challenges like other
it, it,
things.
it's really easy to get seduced into I set this goal. My novels came out last week,
Hmm.
right? Years of work, years and years of work, putting all the doing all the marketing stuff, following the system, doing it, the best I could do. And then you have to release it.
Mm.
And up until that point, you're like, I can still think I'm going to do it, and I can visualize it, and I can see the success, and I can hope I can reach this. Because if you reach certain numbers and things like that, then all of a sudden everything changes from an algorithm standpoint,
Hmm.
right? So it's not just I care about selling books, it's because you do, and then you get to the next level of trajectory, right?
Hmm.
And so you can live in this high waiting till the next goal is supposed to manifest, right?
Hmm.
And but then the day happens, and then what the hell do you do?
Yeah.
Like, what do you do if you don't make it, right? And you're like, "Okay, I just put all this." So the up until that point, it's fine. You feel good because you think you're gonna make the goal, and you think you're going to have this big opening in your world. And then if it doesn't happen, then you go, "Crap, now I gotta re," and then the down, like the up, the high and the low kind of happens. And and yet now it's more like, "Okay," and I got some nice goals. I didn't get to number 1 in my category, which is the goal, but I got to number 7, which is pretty freaking good.
Hmm.
Um, and so, I got some goals, but I also kept having to think in my mind, they want something more for me. They have me want something for me to do. And guess what? I can go back to writing again, and I can, like I can look for the positive next step because there is more, whatever they want. Right? It wasn't my goal that I had to make or break, it was something more.
Yeah. I love how you're also like, you're not necessarily saying that everybody needs to go out and try to be an explorer. Everybody needs to go out and do all these things. Everybody needs to go out and do Bufo. But there are people who have felt disoriented in their lives and have struggled with things who this is going to start to make sense for them. It's like, this does sound like me, and this explains things for me.
It did for me because, like, when I wrote my first book, it was all during the time of The Secret, and everybody was into The Secret, and
Hmm.
then I don't know if anybody's ever said this, out loud, but it was very soon after that was the big phenomena that we went through a global depression.
Hmm.
Right? All these people thinking they can have that Ferrari out in the front window and all these kind of ambitious, mostly materialistic goals. And then all of a sudden, what happened? That didn't necessarily happen. So it was almost the universe saying, this isn't necessarily what your goals should be. This isn't necessarily why you're here is to have that Ferrari out in your front
Hmm.
driveway.
Mm. And
Yeah.
here we are again, like just growing inequality, growing, recognition that these physical things, these material things can't be sustained, and so forth.
Yeah.
Let me ask you the fourth question. As you look back at what you've shared with us, what has changed for you as a result of sitting on this comma?
I bet you can answer it now that I've told you so much, but I mean, pretty much everything. I don't know where I'm living. I mean, I'm in a hotel now. I think I'm going back to Tunisia later this year. Haven't even, I got a flight that's refundable, so that can change if things happen. Um, so everything as far as really being free to not know what's next. Um, and, and, and yet this whole idea of the trust and faith thing is a new idea for me, and really getting that practice, and I'm still practicing on getting tuned in to, okay, what do you guys want? What do you want me to do? And how can I clear out the garbage if it's something holding me back?
What has been your experience so far then, particularly on that? Well, two things. I want to say just being free to not know what's next. That's really powerful right there. And then the clearing out the
Yeah.
garbage, what's working for you so far? Like what are you doing that is effective for you to help you accomplish that?
Yeah, well, I've had in the last few months, I've had two different really talented regression therapists take me to on a soul journey or a life between lives or an other side journey. Um, I'm sure you'll probably put it in the notes, but I have a podcast that's called Life is a Trip, Reincarnation Stories, and it's really just stories. And I also have a Facebook group with the same name. And so I really love these kinds of stories, whether they're fictional or factual. And so I have these contacts of these really talented people that help people get on that kind of exploration. And so I had two of them do that and show me some windows. And one of them last week, I had this image of this very huge heel of a hand on my chest, but like the hand was 50 times the size of me, right? And it was like the only word I could think of that was coming to me as it was some sort of oppression. And we had to clear that. Um, and I have a clearing meditation I offer to people to clear some of this kinds of stuff too, because we just get garbage around us that can attach to us, and we just got to get rid of it. And just like, I mean, I gave it to a friend of mine who's like this very high level spiritual person, and they're like, oh my God, I feel better.
Mm.
So certainly those are there are activities like that that we can do. Um, but these regressions also allow me to go in and get some really information and talk to this team and see them and feel them and understand kind of who's on the team, and there's more to it. And there are a lot of questions they didn't answer too. So they're still not going to tell me everything.
Well, and it seems like you said, right? Like that's for the next chapter. That's, let's don't give it all away. Like there's still much more to be written.
Yeah, and like, I mean, you can kind of imagine if you're in a relationship with somebody and then, you know that they need to go through a difficult time to get to that next level. And if you just go to them going, no, 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 don't have to go through that. You just go, you can just take the sidestep that. They're not going to learn the lesson. It's like healing. If you could go and wipe out somebody's illness, if it happened for a reason, it's not going to help them because that reason is gone,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can't bypass some of those steps even if we wanna fast forward or whatever.
Yeah. The old parable, the butterfly in the cocoon, right?
Yeah,
And the
yes,
struggle
exactly. Or
strengthens the
I like the
wings.
bird in the shell, right? They have to
Yeah.
be really strong to peck themselves out of that shell before they're ready to fly. They're not gonna fly if you open up the shell for them. That's exactly right.
Oh, wonderful. Before I ask the last question, which usually the answer is pretty straightforward to those, not always, but it feels like before we wrap it up, it feels like we might be incomplete. It feels like there might be something else that you wanted to include in this story. Is that the case, or is that just me?
No, well, only just that, they're still I'm writing a sequel, and I don't know what the answer is to the sequel.
Mm.
It is really fun though, because I will give some things that are this happening because I think you'll kind of get a trip. Is my character actually goes and meets the time being. And apparently takes a swim in the and or a swim in the sea of consciousness and you know and goes on a trip on the train of thought, right? So like it's going to get into some really trippy stuff in terms of like if you're looking at your life and going back and going, okay, how do I, because she's going to go through a life review, all these kinds of experiences. And I don't know how that's going to manifest in the real world. I do know that there are some people in my life right now who are asking, like, can you tell me what it's going to be? Because I might be part of that. And I'm like,
Mm,
can't, I don't know.
yeah.
So it's still uncertain, but I am writing more. So, the end isn't the end if it's a reincarnation story, as the
Yeah.
saying would go.
That's cool. And I just so appreciate how like the thread that binds all of it together is you're writing, you're writing about things, you're writing about your own experiences, you're writing the story that's being given to you to write, like, but the writing is always there. That form of expression is sort of the output or one of many outputs, I'm sure, for all of this life experience.
Yeah, and that's what I tell like I said, I think everybody should, you don't have to call yourself a writer, you don't have to pretend to be anything more, but just sit and write. If you think you're like, okay, I think I may have this past life, then start writing it. Nobody's going to
Hmm.
argue whether it's true or not, right? Just write it because that's the way you can open up that communication, like the Liz Gilbert thing. That thought bubble can land on you, and it may just be your communication with your team or your higher
Hmm.
self or whatever, whatever term you want to use.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, last of the five questions. Brownell, what does getting off the comma look like for you?
You mean going forward?
Yeah, or however you choose to interpret that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is being willing to, somebody said many years ago, like if you had an autobiography, what would be the title? And back then, it was like taking a flying leap. Sometimes you have to be pushed off the cliff to know you can find out you can fly. In that time, in that vernacular or that time period is like corporate America, because I was leaving corporate America. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, I had to be pushed off the cliff from corporate America to find out I could be an entrepreneur or on my own. But I think that's true with any comma, right? It's like you gotta sometimes, the saying grow your wings as you maybe not that. I don't know that I would be that daring, but just maybe not know where exactly the landing is because the wings will take you where they go.
I hear over and over and over again the acceptance, the surrender, and the getting comfortable if you can, or at least accepting the not knowing, like, or not needing to know all the time where it's going to go. So much more we could talk about. And obviously, you're going to share with us in a second, where people can find you. And I know there's so much more that you have to share out there. And I think folks are going to be really curious to go out and learn more about you through your writing. As we look back on the story that you've shared with us and the conversation we've had for the last 45 minutes or so, what would you acknowledge yourself for in the telling of your story?
Um, I guess the fact that I'm hopefully being as transparent as I can be, and that I certainly know that there's been some things that I've gone through this year and I've been sharing them on social media. And the more I share about my true self, the more authentic the people that are drawn to me.
Hmm.
And so, that can be kind of scary to say, oh, I'm doing this, thing. And people are like, oh my God, that's cool. I'm following it. And I'm thinking, don't you think it's weird?
Mm,
And so I think they got kind of living vicariously, so I think that's part of
yeah.
it.
Well, and I keep saying, oh, I don't think it's weird at all, but maybe weird is the draw. Like maybe people are ready for weird. People are looking
Yeah,
for weird. I sit there and say, I've decided at the age of 54 that I'm trying to embrace my weirdo self, and go the weird ways and do the crazy things. So, yeah, I
yeah.
think there's definitely, there's an appetite for that out there,
Well,
right?
you get so entrenched, it's like, we sit there and think if we're living in a house and everything, well, I need this certain kind of mattress now. Oh, I gotta have this certain kind of pillow. I can't sleep if I don't have this pillow. And you go traveling, you get the mattress you get the pillow you get. Like
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, the things that were like these huge rules, if you're in this tight little box, are gonna be uncomfortable. But you start opening up to the world and you're like, okay, I'll try that, whatever.
Yeah. Oh, it's so revealing, isn't it? Like everything is not what we led ourselves to believe, what we were led to believe, and that you actually can get by on way less and with far less things than you expect, right?
Yeah. In
Mm.
countries where you don't even speak the language.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love that. You and I are going to talk more off the mic. Okay, Brownell, let's land this plane today, or let's wrap things up. So first, I'll put it all in the show notes. The links will be there. Folks can go. Please do go and click on the links. But walk us through, where can people find you if they want to learn more about you? They want to access some of these things that you've been writing and/or talk with you.
Yeah, well, my name is Brownell Landrum. I'm the only Brownell Landrum in the world. So you Google me, you're going to find me. They're not going to find anybody else. So I have a website by my name. My Life is a Trip Facebook group. You'll see it's really pretty stained glass kind of look. So please join us if you're into that kind of thing. And you'll find out about the podcast and all of that. And I know you're going to give a link to my story, The End. A love story to the universe. So I'm definitely want to share that with everybody because it's free.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you'll figure out what other things that it's easy to find me.
Yeah.
I'm under
Fa-
my name everywhere that you can find me.
Fabulous. And we'll have links there in the show notes. Last thing before we close, because you've been generous with us today here, sharing your story and helping us kind of connect with you through your experiences. And because this podcast is all about lifting people up and storytelling, we do this section in every episode that I call acknowledgments. And it's as you look at people in your circle, who would you like to give a voice to, acknowledge, boost, lift up? So that can be causes or organizations or other creators or people in your life. Who would you like to acknowledge today? And we'll put their information in the show notes.
Yeah, well, thanks. Karen Muller Bryson is my book marketing coach. So she's the one who told me I needed to write the story, and I couldn't have done it, any of it. None of
Mm,
it would have happened probably if she hadn't nudged me. So I'd love to thank her. She's been just such a rock and such a support and such a good friend, and a big help. And then there's regression people that I've used that I mentioned a couple of them. One is Bruce Kolosky. You can find him in my group, and another one is Beth Byer, all very talented. So if you need that kind of help, I think they're really good people and there's a bunch of other really good ones, but those are the ones who've really given me some really powerful insights on those kind of explorations.
wonderful. Wonderful. And thanks for lifting these folks up. And with that, thank you for sharing your story with us today. So many things in here for all of us. And I personally have taken so many things from what you've shared. You've definitely validated a lot of my own experiences. And we will look forward to connecting with you more and wish you a wonderful week ahead.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it very much.
Likewise. What an honor it is for me to witness these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way too. Think about what you learned from this conversation. What stood out for you? What challenged you? What inspired you? And I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling and reflection. Surprises can reveal themselves to you when you do this. And if you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. Let's spread the word. Let's continue to build connection. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode, follow the podcast here on this platform and social media at Off the Comma, and feel free to comment and interact with these posts and episodes. Check out my website for workshops, events, and my sponsor community. I'm covering the costs of production by curating my own sponsors who align with our vision. Be sure to check them out. They're all powerful people and businesses. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.